Shall move to questions without notice. Are there any questions? Give the call to the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Employment and concerns shocking revelations exposed by journalist Nick McKenzie. Under Labor's hand-picked CFMEU administrator, corrupt and criminal CFMEU officials have been meeting with underworld figure Mick Gatto and violent abuser John Setka, as well as receiving secret bribes. Does the minister still have
the
full...
member for McEwen will leave the chamber under 94A. And the Leader of the Opposition will begin her question again. When I say there's not to be interjections when people are asking questions, I mean it. There are consequences for actions. Everyone should understand that by now. The Leader of the Opposition has the call.
My question is to the Minister for Employment and concerns shocking revelations exposed by journalist Nick McKenzie. Under Labor's hand-picked CFMEU administrator, corrupt and criminal CFMEU officials have been meeting with underworld figure Mick Gatto and violent abuser John Setka, as well as receiving secret bribes. Does the minister still have full confidence in Mark Irving?
Call to the Minister for Employment and the Minister for Workplace Relations.
Well, thank you, as Speaker. I'd like to thank the Leader of the Opposition for her question. And I want to make a statement really clearly. The government has absolutely no tolerance for criminal conduct or misbehaviour in the building industry. And that is why our government took the strongest possible action to put the CFMEU into administration. Now, let me just talk about this is very difficult work. This is difficult work, and I have spoken with the administrator on numerous occasions about just how difficult this work is. And for him, he is absolutely committed to clean out this union. And I just want to go through some of the work that he has already been doing. He has taken significant steps to either remove or accept the resignation of over 60 staff, over two-thirds who were in leadership positions or organisers. He's developed a national code of conduct and a statement of expectations for all staff. He's made it absolutely clear where the union stands when it comes to gifts, organised crime, menacing behaviour and what the consequences will be. He has also acted on over 500 complaints under the anonymous whistleblowing website, which triages complaints, which some are dealt with internally and many are referred to authorities. He is working with, of course, the joint agency working group that consists of the AFP, the FWO, the Fair Work Commission, police forces across all jurisdictions, and he is doing his job. He is working very, very hard and has achieved more in the 16 months than the ABCC did in its whole time it was established.
Order. When the House comes to order, we'll hear from the honourable member for Swan.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Acting Prime Minister. What were the key outcomes of the Prime Minister's recent meetings with the United States?
Call to the Acting Prime Minister.
Well, I thank the member for her question. Last Monday, the Prime Minister had a 3-hour meeting with President Trump in the White House. The meeting was warm, it was engaging, it was constructive. The two leaders spoke about our long-standing and extensive defence relationship. They spoke about the increasing investments by Australian superannuation funds in the United States in the context of a much broader economic relationship between our two nations. And they signed a landmark critical minerals framework agreement, which commits our two countries to not only extracting and mining critical minerals and rare earths, but also to their downstream processing, so that we are actually creating refined product in America and Australia. And that is so important to giving choice and competition to the global market. Now, this is an $8.5 billion agreement. And to get things rolling, there is an immediate $200 million investment in the Alcoa Sojitz Gallium Recovery Project in Western Australia, a $100 million investment in the Arafura Nolans Rare Earths Project in the Northern Territory. And these are just two examples of the kind of sector that we can build here in Australia, which is great for our industry, but also so important for our national security. President Trump reaffirmed America's ongoing commitment to our AUKUS partnership, which matters to us but is very much in the strategic interests of the United States, and he acknowledged the government's investment in the Henderson Defence Precinct, and specifically he committed to the provision of Virginia-class submarines to Australia in the early 2030s. Now, in speaking with the Prime Minister, I know that he very much enjoyed the time that he spent with President Trump. There was a connection and a warm rapport which was evident for all to see. And that is a very good thing, because, Mr Speaker, to have that kind of personal relationship at the very highest level is something which is very much in Australia's national interest.
Yeah. Give the call to the Leader of the Opposition.
My question is to the Minister for Employment. Last year, when asked whether he would deregister the corrupt and criminal CFMEU, the Prime Minister said, quote, "Nothing will be taken off the table." Under Labor's hand-picked administrator, CFMEU officials have been caught taking bribes and running around with bikies and gangland figures. Will the minister finally deregister the CFMEU, as the Coalition has called for, or is the only thing off the table this government's courage to stand up to corrupt criminal unions that bankroll the Labor Party?
Order. Give the call to the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations.
Well, thank you, Speaker, and I thank the Leader of the Opposition for her question. Of course, if she had been following the debate while we were putting the CFMEU into administration, she would know that the strongest possible action you can take in terms of transparency, in terms of ensuring that there is accountability, is to put the CFMEU into administration. Of course, we compare that to what the Coalition did, which was stand up an ABCC, which really was a toothless tiger. And if we look at some of the incidents and allegations that are being exposed at the moment, they happened under the ABCC and indeed the Coalition's watch. So, quite frankly, we on this side of the House are taking this issue of stamping out corruption in the construction industry with the seriousness and the dedication it deserves. It is about getting the regulators to work together. It's about getting the police to work together. It is putting an administration that is so transparent, that reports twice to the Parliament every single year, appoints investigations and tables those investigations or puts them on their website, puts their financial records out for the world to see. This is the type of transparency that we need. But if those opposite think this is an easy task, then they are naive. And it has been demonstrated by the Shadow Minister, who today made some absolutely baseless claims about the administrator, which actually really, for a barrister with the standing of Mark Irving, was absolutely a disgrace. Well, they, on the other side, might want to play politics with this issue. We take it seriously. We want to see a construction industry free from corruption. We are dedicated to the task, and we will work until that task is done.
The call to the honourable member for Hunter.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Resources. How is the Albanese Labor government working with allies and trading partners to secure a reliable supply chain of critical minerals and rare earths?
Give a call to the Minister for Northern Australia and the Minister for Resources.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for Hunter for his excellent question. Last week, I was honoured to be in the Cabinet Room of the White House to witness our Prime Minister and the President of the United States of America sign the landmark Critical Minerals Framework Agreement between Australia and the United States. This historic agreement positions Australia alongside our friends in the US in a global effort to reduce dependency on unstable supply chains and safeguard the technologies that keep our economies and our democracies strong. The framework agreement directly strengthens the investment in Australia's critical minerals sector by providing an architecture for Australian producers to access US financing. The agreement mobilises billions of dollars in financing in Australia and America to turbocharge a $13 billion and Australian dollar pipeline of projects across Western Australia, Queensland, Victoria, New South Wales and the Northern Territory. And there will be more projects to come. This is just the beginning, Mr Speaker. And what does that mean for ordinary Australians? Well, it means more jobs. It means more jobs for more Australians in the resources sector. Mr Speaker, this framework recognises critical minerals for what they are, not just commodities, but strategic assets essential to the national security of Australia and the United States of America. By partnering with the US, we're positioning our critical minerals industry at the centre of global efforts to develop secure, resilient supply chains for the technologies that power modern defence and clean energy systems. Now, I want to be really clear. The US-Australia Critical Minerals Framework did not emerge overnight. From the very day the Albanese Labor government came to power 4 years ago, we have sought to grow the critical minerals and rare earth elements mining and processing sector. This government, the Albanese Labor government, has made the single largest investment in Australian resources sector of any government in this country before it. The Critical Minerals Production Tax Incentive of $17 billion, the Critical Minerals Facility now at $5 billion, Resourcing Australia's Prosperity, which will enable Geoscience Australia to supercharge our exploration capabilities. That's a $3 billion investment. The NAIF has invested $735 million in critical minerals projects, and we are implementing a $1.2 billion critical minerals strategic reserve. This is the work we have been doing since day one, so that when we got to the White House on Monday with the Prime Minister sitting alongside the President, we were able to deliver for the Americans and for the Australian people and jobs in resources. It is indisputable. No government has done more than the Albanese Labor government for the resources sector and the critical minerals and rare earth elements mining and processing sector of this country.
Order.
Believe it.
Before I call the member for Ryan, I'll just do some acknowledgements. Members on my left, I would like to do some acknowledgements in the gallery. And I'm pleased to inform the House that in the southern gallery today are members of the Australian Defence Force personnel participating in the parliamentary exchange element of the 2025 ADF parliamentary program. On behalf of the House, I extend a warm welcome to you all and thank you for your service to our nation. And also Year 11 students from Cootamundra High School in the Riverina electorate. Welcome to you all. I'll give the call to the member for Ryan.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Acting Prime Minister. The median house price in capital cities across Australia has increased by $35,000 in the last 3 months as a result of the government's 5% house deposit scheme. Modelling suggests this policy could increase house prices by 10% in the first year alone. Will you admit that the Labor government is driving unsustainable house price growth for the benefit of big banks and at the expense of everyday Australians?
Give the call to the Minister for Housing and the Minister for Homelessness and the Minister for Cities.
Thank you so much, Speaker, and I thank the member for her question. Speaker, we've got a housing crisis in our country that's been cooking for 40 years. The simple problem is that for that entire period of time, our country has not been building enough homes. And, Speaker, that's why the $43 billion package, the historic package that our government is implementing, is focused primarily on building more homes for Australians. Speaker, we're doing that by building 55,000 social and affordable homes, something the Greens political party did everything to stop us doing. Speaker, we're building 100,000 homes for first home buyers. And, Speaker, we're trying to push towards this national aspiration of building 1.2 million homes over a 5-year period. Now, Speaker, this is the main game, building homes for Australians. But what the Greens political party are really saying to us here is that while we are doing that hard work of addressing the fundamental issues facing our country on housing, that we are not going to do anything to help the young people of today, and that is a position that our government fundamentally disagrees with, Speaker. One of the main issues that young people talk to all of us as parliamentarians about is the challenges that they face getting into the housing market. Now, Speaker, we've got lots of people in this parliament representing Sydney seats. In your electorates, the average young couple is saving for 11 years to get into the property market for the first time. Because of our expansion of the 5% deposit program, Speaker, we are bringing that back to 2 or 3 years. This is really meaningful support for people. Now, the Greens have got a lot to say about this program, but I want them to look the people who use it in the eye and talk to them about their issues, because we now have 190,000 Australians who have been supported into their first home because of our government's program. 190,000 Australians that the Greens political party are saying should never have got government support to buy their first home. Now, Speaker, the Greens played a disgraceful act of politics over the last 3 years. They came into this parliament day after day after day, saying that they were advocating for people who need housing support, and at the same time doing everything they could to work with the Liberal Party to block housing, to block more housing, to block housing support for first homeowners, even to provide better support for renters, which is one of the things that they talked about most, Speaker. So I hope that in this new term of parliament the Greens have got the opportunity to turn over a new leaf. We want to work across the political parties to get better action for Australians. That is exactly what the Australian people expect us to be doing, Speaker.
Call to the honourable member for Spence.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Acting Prime Minister. How are the Prime Minister's recent meetings in the United States and in Malaysia for the ASEAN Summit providing opportunities for economic growth and job creation here at home? What has been the response?
Call to the Acting Prime Minister.
Well, I thank the member for his question. Today, the Prime Minister is in Kuala Lumpur, attending the ASEAN Leaders Meeting and the East Asian Summit, and later in the week he will be in Korea, attending APEC. East Asia, Southeast Asia, is very important to Australia's national security, but it is utterly evident that the Asia-Pacific region and Southeast Asia specifically are completely central to Australia's modern economic story. What we see in terms of activity in East Asia is the fastest-growing area in the world. ASEAN on its own by 2040 will be the 4th largest economy on the planet, and 3/4 of Australia's trade is derived from the APEC region. So when our Prime Minister is over there, he is fighting for Australian jobs right here, which is what he was doing last week when he met with President Trump, and where the closeness and the trust in our relationship with America was so palpable. We have a deep economic relationship with the United States. America remains our largest two-way investment partner, and today Australia has the lowest American tariff of any country in the world. And that's why all of this should be above partisan politics. And in turn it is why, when Labor has been in opposition, we have always wanted the coalition government of the day to succeed. And historically, that's actually been the case for the coalition as well, except until now, where it has been absolutely obvious that those opposite have been completely desperate for our government to fail in the management of our relationship with the United States. Now, that is their prerogative. but those in the gallery should understand that what this represents is a historic departure for any major party of government in this country in terms of its support for the Australia-United States relationship. Now, there have been some voices of maturity on the other side, but that definitely does not include the Leader of the Opposition. And this is one of the clearest demonstrations that right now the Liberals are just broken, and Australia deserves better. And so, while those opposite are busy eating themselves, we will get on with the serious business of managing these critical relations which are essential to our economic prosperity and which help keep Australia safe.
Call to the honourable member for Goldstein.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Employment. The Minister has said the government's administration of the corrupt and criminal CFMEU is, quote, the strongest available action. But CFMEU officials have been meeting with underworld figures such as Mick Gatto and violent abuser John Setka, as well as receiving secret bribes. Why has the Albanese government done nothing to address this crime and corruption? And is it because the Prime Minister's Labor leadership, under the Prime Minister's Labor leadership, those opposite have received almost $7 million in CFMEU donations?
I'll hear from the Leader of the House on a point of order.
Mr Speaker, in terms of imputing motives, it doesn't get too much stronger than what just happened there, and the question should be ruled out.
We've had this issue before regarding the same topic before, so we'll just get the member to withdraw the last part of that question. Just, you know,
withdraw the last part of the question.
Yeah.
You want the question again?
Well, I think we know the question because it was the question. It wasn't the question that was out of order. It was just the last statement. Yeah. He's done that. Order. The member for Isaacs. I don't need your assistance when the member followed my direction. Completely unnecessary. Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations has the call.
Well, thank you, Speaker, and I thank the Shadow Minister for his question, and probably from the outset reject the assertions that were in that question. But what might help him is for me to go through some of the action that both the administrator and the regulators have taken during the 16 months that the administration has been in place. At first, I would note that, as I previously said, the administrator's difficult work has been to date to remove or accept the resignations of 60 staff, over two-thirds who were in leadership positions. Of course, the administrator has made it absolutely clear where the union stands on expectations of staff and new code of conduct, been very clear about what the consequences will be. Now, of course, the administration has received over 500 complaints under its anonymous whistleblowing process and has been working very closely with the Joint Agency Working Group that consists of the Fair Work Ombudsman, Fair Work Commission, various police forces and other regulators in various jurisdictions. The administrator has also made specific referrals of criminal conduct to the Victorian and New South Wales police forces, as well as contraventions of the industrial legislation to the regulatory agencies. The administration has established an integrity unit. It engages investigations and barristers to conduct inquiries into defined matters. The administration has commissioned leading independent corruption expert Geoffrey Watson to undertake multiple detailed investigations and has taken appropriate action based on those reports, referring many matters to regulators and law enforcement. Of course, in addition to the work that the administrator is taking, of course, our regulators and law law enforcement agencies are doing their job as well. The Fair Work Ombudsman is undertaking significant compliance and enforcement action in relation to misconduct in the construction industry by both unions and employers. As of the 12th of September 2025, the Fair Work Ombudsman is progressing 19 investigations in relation to multiple branches of the construction and general division of the CFMEU. Of course, there's Operation Rye, which was established to assess information and coordinate investigation of allegations related into the criminal offending of the Construction, Forestry and Maritime Employees Union. And the AFP is the chair of the Joint Agency Working Group. So, quite frankly, to suggest that our government is not doing anything when it comes to crime and corruption in the building industry, I can reassure this House that we have done more in our term in government than those on the other side. We are taking this seriously. The Shadow Minister might want to pretend he's in university politics, throwing around accusations, while we're the adults in the room and will continue to be so.
When the House comes to order, we'll hear from the honourable member for Dunkley.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. How is the Albanese Labor government helping Australians earn more, keep more of what they earn and retire with more? What other approaches is the government being asked to consider?
Call to the Treasurer.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. Thanks to the member for Dunkley for her question. In her relatively short time in this place, a real champion for the working people of her community and our country, Mr Speaker. This week in the Parliament, our payday super reforms will help ensure that more Australians get paid their super when they get paid their salary. It's about making sure that workers' super is paid and paid on time. It's another proud Labor reform, which will mean more super for workers, Mr Speaker. That's our goal and that's what we are delivering. It's not the only important change we're making to strengthen our super system. We legislated the objective. We increased the super guarantee 4 times to reach 12%. We expanded the coverage of the performance test. We've aligned the financial reporting with public companies. We've got new mandatory service standards, reforming the retirement phase. We're paying superannuation on paid parental leave for the first time. And now our changes to better targeted superannuation concessions and the low-income superannuation tax offset, which will mean that 1.3 million Australians will get more super when they retire, Mr Speaker. These changes will make the superannuation system fairer from top to bottom. They mean a better deal and more super for low-income workers, and that's what those opposite are really objecting to, Mr Speaker. Because when they apply their narrow, extreme, right-wing ideology in government, workers in this country don't get a look in, and we saw that for the best part of a decade, Mr Speaker. They are always looking to undermine and diminish and attack superannuation because they know that super is a proud creation of this side of the House, Mr Speaker. Under this government, this Labor government, Australians are earning more because we got real wages growing again. They're keeping more of what they earn because we're cutting taxes 3 times, Mr Speaker, and they'll retire with more as well because of these changes. Those opposite want the workers of this country to earn less, to keep less and to retire with less, Mr Speaker. They haven't learned a thing from the last election. They haven't changed a bit, Mr Speaker. They are divided, they are divisive and they are in disarray, but this side of the House is delivering for the working people of this country, and that's the difference. And nowhere is that clearer than in our efforts to make our super system stronger and fairer and more sustainable, and because of those efforts, more workers will have more super when they retire and the system will be fairer from top to bottom.
Calls no member for Goldstein. Order. The Treasurer is warned.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Employment. Journalist Nick McKenzie, who was uncovering the truth about corruption in the CFMEU and its links to organised crime and gangland figures, has endured home intrusions in a chilling act of intimidation that has no place in this country. Australians deserve to know the truth. What specific action has the government taken to protect journalists who are just doing their jobs to expose CFMEU corruption?
The question was not particularly under the minister's portfolio in terms of the action that you asked, so it should be really directed to another minister. But if the minister is happy to answer part of the question,
happy part of it. And
the minister has the call.
Look, firstly, I thank the member for his question, and I think every member of this House would have absolutely no tolerance for intimidation of journalists or indeed anyone in this country. If I'm going to speak to whistleblowing for people coming forward about the CFMEU, because that does fall into my responsibilities, not only are there protections in the Registered Organisations Act, but our government specifically built in whistleblower protections in the administration. And of course, well, I was asked about whistleblowers and protections for Australians, and so I'm answering that question. Now, there are specific provisions in the administration that protect people coming forward. I would make one point, though. In my conversations with the administrator, the action that he is taking ensures, first and foremost, the safety of his staff. That is the seriousness that he is undertaking his work, that the safety of his staff, and of course that extends to all Australians. We take this job seriously. We are taking this with a level of attention that those opposite have not done. There is no place for violence in this country. There is no place for intimidation of anyone, journalist or any Australian worker, and we are committed, as I've said on numerous occasions, of getting the job done, stamping out violence, criminality and corruption from the building industry, and we are committed to doing just that.
Call to the honourable member for Macquarie.
Thank you, Speaker. My question's to the Attorney-General. What's the Albanese Labor government doing to protect Australian creatives when it comes to artificial intelligence?
Call to the Attorney-General.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for her question. A core Labor value is supporting Australian voices, Australian culture and Australian stories. And of course, this government has two great champions for the arts, in our Prime Minister and also in the Leader of the House and the Minister for the Arts. Artificial intelligence presents significant opportunities for Australia and our economy. However, it's important that Australian creatives benefit from these opportunities too. Australian creatives are not only world-class, but also the lifeblood of Australian culture, and we must ensure that the right legal protections are in place. The Albanese government has consistently said there are no plans to weaken copyright protections when it comes to AI. Now, some in the technology sector have called for the introduction of a broad text and data mining exception. Under such a proposal, artificial intelligence developers would be able to use the works of Australian creators for free and without permission to train AI systems. Now, the government stands behind Australia's creative industries, and that is why we have ruled out a text and data mining exception, and that's to provide certainty for Australian creators. And we welcome the support that has been expressed right across the creative industries. Annabel Hurd, the CEO of ARIA, said it's absolutely a critical step in the right direction, and it is a win for creativity and Australian culture, including First Nations culture, but it's also a win for common sense. Australian Society of Authors CEO Lucy Hayward said, "People deserve to be paid for their work. It's as simple as that." That's what the government has confirmed with this announcement. Australian singer-songwriter Holly Rankin, better known as Jack River, said, "We are on the right side of history on this. People should be paid for their work." And the great Kate Ceberano said, It's a day to celebrate. And, Mr Speaker, I couldn't agree more. Work is underway to ensure that Australia is prepared for future copyright challenges emerging from AI. And that's why I've made the decision to reconvene the Copyright and AI Reference Group over the next 2 days, and it will have a renewed focus on 3 priority areas. Firstly, encouraging fair legal avenues for using copyright material in AI. Secondly, exploring opportunities to clarify how copyright law applies to material generated through the use of AI, and examining avenues for less costly enforcement of copyright infringement. We encourage the tech industry and the creative sector to now come together and find sensible and workable solutions to support innovation while ensuring creators are fairly compensated.
Give a call to the member for Flynn.
Mr Speaker, my question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Industry and Innovation. Minister, how many direct jobs will be lost with the possible closure of Gladstone Power Station in 2029?
The call to the Minister representing the Minister for Industry and Innovation.
Well, I'm happy to start.
Order. Members on my left. Order. Members on my left will just cease interjecting so the Minister can begin his answer.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I'll start the question, but as was directed to a question about energy, I think it's more appropriately answered by the Minister for Energy. But we've been very clear that the energy sector is going through a transition as ageing coal-fired power stations close down. Unlike those opposite, we've got plans in place to drive investment into the sector. When they were in government, gigawatts of capacity closed down without suitable replacement. And who suffered the most? Heavy industry in this country. That uncertainty drove power prices, as they had 23 different energy prices that placed Australian manufacturing under huge pressure. We're combating that right now with our Future Made in Australia agenda, which is driving investment into manufacturing because we're focused on it. Unlike those opposite who cheered manufacturing going offshore, including the automotive industry, we're focused on cheap energy to drive manufacturing.
Order. The member for Page on a point of order.
A point of order on relevance, Speaker. That was a very tight question. There was no preamble in the question. I asked you to direct the Minister back.
Order. The member is entitled to raise a point of order on relevance, as any other member is. He's allowed to do that. The Leader of the House on the point of order.
Yeah, Mr Speaker, the question was sufficiently tight that it was directed to the wrong minister. The minister representing is giving some general remarks as is appropriate, but as indicated, a question about energy would ordinarily, when you're working out where a question about energy might go, the energy minister is usually the option.
Order. Yeah. On the member for Chifley is warned. I'm just going to do this respectfully so that everyone is entitled to raise their points of order, but just make it on the point of order by the Leader of the House, the member for Page.
Well, Speaker, I go back to the point of relevance. We can go into the semantics. The Minister chose to take the question.
Yeah.
The Minister chose to take the question, so if he's chosen to take the question, I ask him to be relevant. There was no preamble. It was a very tight question. If he's going to take it, answer it.
Yeah, I guess the issue. Order. I guess the issue is when we're asking questions to ministers, it needs to be directed to the person who has responsibility for that. And it was order. The question was about a specific number, which the member for Flynn is chasing or seeking, about the policy. And as we've heard, so the minister can conclude shortly. So if the other minister wishes to address the actual figure, which I think the member for Flynn is after, we'll do it that way. But it's going to assist the House if questions can be directed to the minister responsible, and then no one will be in this position, including me. The Minister, if you can wrap up, and then we'll give the Energy Minister a go.
Thanks, Speaker. I'll conclude by saying we're providing more certainty to workers than those on the opposite ever did. And I invite Minister Bowen.
All right. Now, the member for Durack. We'll hear from the Minister for Energy and Climate Change.
Well, thanks very much, Mr Speaker. I thank the honourable member for his question, and I'm glad he hasn't been sharing his views about man-made climate change with the House for a change, Mr Speaker. But in answer to the honourable member's question, there are about 200 direct employees at the Gladstone Power Station. There are others employed on contracting basis and indirectly, and obviously that's a significant number for the people of Gladstone. But also this is a decision taken by the owners of the Gladstone Power Station they have announced, and that is in keeping with the normal protocols. Now, I would make this point, Mr Speaker. Those opposite are strongly supporting having coal-fired power stations open for longer and sweating the assets to see them last longer. Now, what that is, Mr Speaker, is the biggest threat to reliability in our energy system today. You know why? Because just today we have 2 units at the Callide Power Station, which the honourable member would know well, out and not operating, and we have a total unplanned outages across our national energy system of 3.4 gigawatts of coal-fired power. Not planned, not maintenance, coal-fired power stations that were working and then all of a sudden break down. That is the biggest threat to the reliability of our energy system, and that in turn is a threat to energy prices, because that sees prices spike, and that is in turn the biggest threat to industrial jobs in Australia, those opposite who don't understand the opportunities of our energy system and the need to modernise it now, not in decades' time when nuclear might become available.
Call to the honourable member for Leichhardt.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government. What is the Albanese Labor government doing to support regional communities and make sure they are better connected to the rest of Australia? Has there been any opposition to the government's approach?
Give the call to the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and can I thank the member for Leichhardt for the question and for his continual advocacy for regional Australians. And I also note the interjection of the member for Riverina, who might feature in my question a little too. I'd like to add how incredibly proud I am to be the member for Ballarat and represent my regional community. And in fact, this Labor government represents more regional electorates than any other party in this place, from Cairns to Lonnie to Ballina, for Beverley and the many in between. Now, we also know how crucial it is that regional Australians have access to aviation, to access the care they need to see family and to pursue opportunities. That's why it was very encouraging to see the announcement last week that a sale and implementation deed to purchase Rex Airlines has been entered into by Air TT and the administrators. It's a very positive step towards bringing Rex out of administration. I'd like to thank the many hard-working public servants who've worked tirelessly over the past year to try and get this done. We still have a way to go, but it is a very positive development for the future of Rex Airlines. And as this process continues, our priority as a government will remain on protecting regional Australians and their access to these critical services. It's why, when Rex first went into administration, we stepped up to provide a guarantee of regional flight bookings for Rex customers and a loan facility to the administrators to ensure that Rex could continue to fly throughout this process. Now, at the time, this was not wholly supported, with members opposite calling our support for Rex a bridge too far, and to support our support to extend the administration so we could get a solution, being told we were kicking the can down the road till after the election to try and then hide somehow that Rex would not survive. But I'm very hopeful that our strong position to support regional Australians will pay off, and our position has, of course, been supported by the sector and others, the Australian Airports Association saying this is a significant development for regional aviation and provides much-needed certainty for communities that rely on essential air services, with the Airlines Australia and New Zealand thanking the Australian government for its tenacity in keeping Rex flying and thereby protecting the airline's vital regional and rural links. And the member for Riverina, who said, I've had many conversations with Catherine King and Anthony Albanese. I can confirm that that is the case about this, and I thank the government for their work in supporting Rex. And I acknowledge and thank the efforts made by some of those opposite to support the government in our work to bring Rex out of voluntary administration. We'll continue to support the process. We're not quite there yet, and work to ensure regional Australians have access to reliable, affordable and available flights now and into the future.
Call to the member for Clark.
My question is to the Health Minister.
Minister, Australia's hospital system is in crisis. State budgets aren't big enough to properly fund public hospitals, and the health insurance isn't working for the private sector. People are suffering needlessly and far too often dying prematurely. Only the Commonwealth has the financial and policy heft to turn things around. Minister, when will the federal government finally act to fix things? Because, let's face it, just negotiating another funding agreement is hardly bold reform.
Call to the Minister for Health, the Minister for Aged Care and the Minister for the NDIS.
Well, thank you, Speaker, and I thank the member for his question and recognise his passion over many years in this place for better services in his part of Tasmania in particular, but the country more broadly. He knows there's a lot of pressure on our health and aged care systems after a decade of cuts and neglect, after a once-in-a-century pandemic, and with very significant demographic pressures on our system. Like the member, my state is slightly older than the rest of the country. We're feeling those pressures more than most, but we're seeing it right across the system. So I respect the member's passion for this area, but I don't agree with a lot of the suggestions in his question. And I have to say this week is a particularly weird week for the member to suggest this is not a government focused on bold reform. When this is the week where we are debating a bill to introduce a Centre for Disease Control. This is the week when the Assistant Minister for Health is rolling out a whole range of new measures to deal with the neglect that has been there for so long around women's health. This is the week when we are introducing an entirely new aged care system under the leadership of the Aged Care Minister. And, Mr Speaker, at the end of this week, we will be introducing and rolling out the biggest ever investment in bulk billing in the history of Medicare, Mr Speaker. And the member for Clark knows, more than anyone else in this chamber, the benefit of investment in bulk billing, because since we first tripled the bulk billing incentive 2 years ago, the member for Clark's electorate has seen the biggest increase in bulk billing of any electorate in this chamber, a 14% increase, and more will come after Saturday, Mr Speaker. In Tasmania, we've seen the benefit of our policies to get more doctors and nurses into the system. The member for Clark has 2 urgent care clinics in his electorate, Mr Speaker, taking pressure off the hospitals that his question talks about.
We'll pause. The minister was asked about what is bold reform, and he is going through it, but I'll hear from the member for Clark.
Thank you, Speaker. Well, it is on relevance. The question went very specifically to the crisis in our hospital sector, not urgent care clinics, not GPs, not the other things that the minister has listed.
Yeah, but the question also contained what is happening with funding and went to the position about being bold. I know what your angle is, but if you ask a question about, and that's the question at the end, it's pretty relevant for the minister to outline those, but I'll ask him to be directly relevant, and he perhaps may have more information about the funding agreement.
I do, Mr Speaker. But I think in his heart of hearts the member for Clark knows that our health and aged care system is an integrated ecosystem. And when bulk billing is not working, when people are paying too much for their medicines, they don't fill the scripts their doctors have said are important, they don't go to the GP when they need to go to the GP, and the member for Clark knows that means they end up in hospital far more regularly than they should, Mr Speaker. That's why addressing pressure in primary care, making medicines cheaper, is not just good for the hip pocket, it's good for the health of millions of Australians who get the health care when and where they need it in the community. And there is no better example, Mr Speaker, of our reform and its connection to the hospital system than our 90 urgent care clinics, 2 of which are located in the member for Clark's electorate, which have already seen more than 2 million Australians, most of whom say if they weren't able to go to that clinic they would end up at the emergency department. So I know the member for Clark is passionate about this. I agree there are pressures. I entirely reject the idea we're not a government of bold reform.
Call to the honourable member for Gorton.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Housing and Homelessness. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering for aspiring first home buyers? What are the risks to this approach?
Call to the Minister for Housing, the Minister for Homelessness and the Minister for Cities.
Thank you so much, Mr Speaker, and I want to thank the member for Gorton for her question. She is an extremely powerful voice for housing action within our caucus. Yeah. Now, she's coming from a very particular perspective, Speaker. Not only does she represent one of the great growth corridors in Melbourne, housing is a massive issue in her constituency, but we have here a member of a younger generation who faces radically different housing opportunities than their parents and grandparents. And she's talked to me again and again, Speaker, about her desire for our government to step in and do every single thing we can to help young Australians get better housing opportunities. Now, Speaker, that is why our government has made an historic expansion for home ownership support for young people. Since the 1st of October, every single first home buyer around our country is eligible to get into the housing market with a 5% deposit and our government's backing. This was, of course, an election commitment made by our Prime Minister at our campaign launch, Speaker. We said that we'd do it by the 1st of January, and guess what, Speaker? We've delivered it 3 months earlier than we promised. Delivery, 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 Speaker. If our government can see that we can deliver support to Australians faster than we promised, we will make it happen. Now, Speaker, this policy is already having life-changing impacts for people who live in the member for Gorton's electorate, in my electorate, and the electorates of every single person around this chamber. Speaker, we have now helped 190,000 Australians get into their first home because of our expansion of this scheme. It is amazing, Speaker. I talked before about the situation for young people who live in Sydney. I'm getting snide remarks from those opposite, Speaker, but I'd encourage them to listen to their constituents, because they're giving our parliament a really clear message. They want more housing support, and that's what our government is giving them. Now, Speaker, we know that a young couple in Sydney was having to save for about 11 years for a home deposit. That's a young couple who are well into their 30s, who are still paying off someone else's mortgage rather than their own. Our expansion to this program will bring that back to 2 to 3 years. Speaker, this is really meaningful change for the young people around this country. Now, Speaker, on housing, as with other issues, Labor is getting on with the job of delivering what we promised. The Coalition, they're just getting on each other's nerves, Speaker. They're much too focused on writing their own leadership manifestos than they are about having anything meaningful to say.
Order. The Minister will pause. Yeah. Order. The Minister will pause and the Manager will raise his point of order.
Well, on relevance, Speaker, and the Minister just said she's moving to other matters. So she finished her question. She should sit down.
Order. The Leader of the House. The Leader of the House. On the
Mr. Speaker, it's always been the case in any question that there can be moments of compare and contrast. That's a principle long established, including by Speaker Smith.
Yeah, I mean, the Manager raises the point of order. The Minister wasn't. Yeah, I understand the concept here. She wasn't asked about alternative policies or alternative approaches, so she'll have to make sure that her remarks are relevant. So the Manager is correct, and she's straying into a sledge on the opposition, and that wasn't part of a comment about the opposition. That wasn't part of the question. So we'll just get her to return to the question.
Speaker, and the point that I'm making, Speaker, is that we've got a government on one side of the House that's focused on delivery of our absolutely massive housing agenda. We have an opposition that is absolutely in the wilderness without a single sensible thing to say about one of the most important issues facing our country. Now, Speaker, the Australian people deserve a government focused on delivery, and that's what they're getting from us. 190,000 Australians in their own home because of our government's program, and there will be thousands more to come as we expand that program from 1 October.
The call to the Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question goes to the Treasurer, and it follows the Treasurer's humiliating backflip on his super tax proposal. Can the Treasurer advise the House whose rejection most influenced his decision to dump his tax? Was it A, the Coalition, B, industry experts and economists, C, the Prime Minister.
The member will pause.
D.
The member will pause. The member for McNamara will leave the chamber under 94A. He's not to mention members by their name, particularly in interjecting on a question. So we're just going to get them. Look, I don't know why this is so difficult. When people are asking questions, don't interject. There's a lot of intelligent people here. Well, in the gallery there is. But order. We're going to return to order, and the Deputy Leader is just going to ask his question like anybody else without any interjections.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. My question goes to the Treasurer, and it follows the Treasurer's humiliating backflip on his super tax proposal. Can the Treasurer advise the House whose rejection most influenced his decision to dump his tax? Was it A, the Coalition, B, industry experts and economists, C, the Prime Minister, D, his own Labor colleagues and Labor luminaries Paul Keating, Bill Kelty and Peter Beattie, or E, all of the above?
Give a call to the Treasurer.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. Well, I make it really clear to the House that I didn't take the advice of those opposite, Mr Speaker. I didn't take the advice of those opposite, and that's because the question comes from the same people who took to this year's election a policy to increase income taxes on every single one of the 14 million tax-paying workers in this country. The same people who object to smaller tax concessions for 0.5% of people in super wanted to jack up income taxes for 100% of the 14 million tax-paying workers, Mr Speaker. And that's because what they really object to, as I said before, is they really object to more super for more workers. They don't like super. They don't like workers. We know that from their almost decade in office, Mr Speaker. They are always trying to undermine and diminish and come after the superannuation that the working people of this country need and deserve for a decent retirement, Mr Speaker. Now, also don't forget that the question comes from the same guy who wanted to borrow hundreds of billions of dollars to build nuclear reactors to push power prices up, not down. So he asked me who I take my advice from. I don't take my advice from the Shadow Treasurer, Mr Speaker. I really couldn't be clearer about that, Mr Speaker. Now, he can trouble himself all he likes with the political scuttlebutt and the internal far-right politics being practised by those opposite, Mr Speaker. The difference between the Shadow Treasurer and myself as Treasurer is I'm here for the outcomes. I'm here to deliver for the working people of this country, Mr Speaker. I'm here to deliver an increase in real wages. I'm here to deliver income tax cuts. I'm here to deliver more super for more workers so they get the decent retirement that this guy would deny them, Mr Speaker.
The Treasurer will pause. When you ask a very broad political question like that, you're going to get a broad political answer. So just order. And if the Treasurer can just return to the question, that would be helpful to the House as well.
The point I'm making, Mr Speaker, is this side of the House works through issues in a collegiate, in a considered, in a methodical way, and we do what we can to find the best way through and overwhelmingly to deliver for the working people of this country who send us here to represent them in their interests, Mr Speaker. The Shadow Treasurer is here for a little pat on the head on Sky After Dark or a little tickle on the tummy on page 13 of The Australian, Mr Speaker. We are here for the outcomes because it's the outcomes that really matter. The outcomes really matter. We're here to deliver for working people, and that's what we're doing. And because of our efforts, Mr Speaker, and this is what really offends them, because of our efforts, more Australians are working, more Australians are earning more Australians are keeping more of what they earn, and more Australians will retire with more. And that's because we are delivering, they are divided, they are divisive, they are in disarray, and that's the difference.
The Treasurer's time. Order. 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 When the House Manager of Opposition Business and the House comes to order, we'll hear from the member for Moreton.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering cleaner, cheaper and more reliable energy, and why is unity so important in getting that done?
Give the call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Well, Mr Speaker, I thank my honourable friend for the question, and she's a great representative for the Sunshine State in this House, Mr Speaker. And the people of the Sunshine State understand the benefits of renewable energy with their massive take-up of solar energy and with their very strong take-up of cheaper home batteries, because the people of Queensland are well represented in the 100,282 households that have put in a cheaper home battery since the 1st of July. More than 100,000 households and small businesses have taken up this option. And, Mr Speaker, what that means is that we have now installed 2 gigawatt-hours worth of storage, and we have increased the capacity of Australia's home batteries just since the 1st of July by a full 50%. This is a big boost to the grid, and it's a big boost to the opportunities for those households to reduce their energy bills. And on Sunday, the Attorney-General and I were in Rouse Hill visiting Kenny and his family, where he told us that he's reduced his energy bill, Mr Speaker, from $250 a month to $10 with his cheaper home battery. And the reason the Attorney-General and I went to Rouse Hill is because that postcode, 2155, is the postcode with the highest take-up of cheaper home batteries in Australia, in Western Sydney. I know the Attorney-General is excited about that. I'm not sure about the member for Mitchell, who shares that postcode with the Attorney-General, but I know the Attorney-General is a very strong supporter of giving her constituents better choices to reduce their bills and emissions. Now, I'm asked by the member whether or what is the importance of unity in this approach, and it is very important, because this side of the House is unified in our approach to reducing emissions, in our pathway to net zero, and in our determination to provide cost-of-living relief to Australians as we do so. In the meantime, Mr Speaker, those opposite have been having a completely normal one over the parliamentary break. We've had the member for New England do the National Party the greatest service he's ever given them and announced he's leaving, Mr Speaker. He might be off to One Nation, a former leader of a federal political party going to One Nation. What could possibly go wrong? We've never seen that before, but Mr Speaker, they deserve each other, it could be said. Now, Mr Speaker, the leader of the National Party responded to this, and he said, well, we won't be focused on Barnaby Joyce if he goes to another party. We'll be focused on ourselves. I don't think Australians like to, people who change their parties. You know, the reality is we will focus on ourselves. Well, I always try and find a bipartisan note at the dispatch box, as is well known, and I agree entirely with the leader of the National Party. They are focused on themselves. They are not focused on the Australian people. They are not focused on the economic opportunities that Australia sees in net zero. They are not focused on reducing the bills for Australians in the outer suburbs and regions of this country. They are focused on their internal politics, the National Party interest, not the national interest. They are focused on themselves, and they continue to do so.
Call to the honourable member for Bradfield.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Acting Prime Minister. Last week, Australia and the United States signed the Critical Minerals Framework Agreement. Responsibly exploiting our natural resources, securing offtake and diversifying trade partnerships are worthy aims. But the owners of these resources, the Australian people, are left in the dark about how they will benefit. If the PRRT for other resources is anything to go by, this deal won't be making much from royalties that we collect. What we do know so far is that 2 companies will receive significant Australian government investment. When can Aussie taxpayers expect more detail about how the deal works for them?
Call to the Acting Prime Minister.
Well, I thank the member for her question, and she is right in articulating that the landmark Critical Minerals Framework Agreement that was signed by the Prime Minister and the President last week is genuinely in Australia's national interest, is worthy in the terms of the member, and will absolutely have a huge impact on the Australian industry and, through that, the Australian people. Critical minerals is one of the great opportunities that our nation has. We have one of the 5 largest resources of critical minerals and rare earths in the world. And the opportunity not only to mine those critical minerals but to process them represents one of the great opportunities for our manufacturing and our industry this century. And that's because of the particular items which are used by critical minerals and rare earths, which are simply fundamental to the modern economy. Now, what we have faced globally is that whilst we have been engaging in the mining and extraction of critical minerals and rare earths, the processing of them, a sector which would involve significant employment and significant industrial development in this country, has proven much more difficult given the structure of the global market. And that's why we have put in place a number of measures, such as the Critical Minerals Production Tax Incentive and the Critical Minerals Facility, to demonstrate that the Australian government is there supporting the critical minerals sector to engage in that kind of work. And that represents a $28 billion investment in this sector by our government since 2022. In saying that, I would add that when it comes to the Critical Minerals Production Tax Incentive, we did that in the face of the opposition of the Coalition, who talked about that as billions for billionaires, completely failing to understand what this represented for Australian industry. But it is difficult to do this on our own. And that is why the agreement that we signed with the United States last week between the Prime Minister and the President was so important. Because what this does is bring together the might of the US government along with our own in terms of being able to genuinely support these industries going forward. And the benefit for the Australian people is manifest, because what this will see is significant numbers of downstream processing jobs in this sector, which currently are not being there in the Australian economy, and that will be an enormous advantage for the Australian.
Call to the honourable member for Corangamite.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Health. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering more choice, lower costs and better health care for Australian women?
Call to the Minister for Health and Ageing, the Minister for Disability and the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Thanks, Speaker, and thank you to the member for Corangamite for that question. I wish the Assistant Minister for Health was able to give the answer under standing orders, because she is leading such terrific work in this area. And she and I joined literally dozens of members, female members of our caucus earlier this morning to announce the latest measures in our women's health agenda. Having a government that is 57% women, Mr Speaker, as Health Minister you are under no illusion about the truism that you cannot be serious about strengthening Medicare without getting serious about women's health. And for too long we have heard, Mr Speaker, that women have been getting a raw deal from the PBS and from Medicare in far too many areas. For more than 30 years there wasn't a new oral contraceptive pill listed on the PBS. For 30 years there was not a new endometriosis medicine on the PBS. For 20 years there was no new menopause hormone treatment on the PBS. Not because they didn't exist. They did. They were widely used. It's just that no one bothered putting them on the PBS, meaning that women had to pay top dollar for the cutting-edge clinical treatment. We changed that, Mr Speaker. Earlier this year, with an $800 million women's health package, you have seen already, in just 12 months, 3 new oral contraceptive pills. Yasmin, Slinda, widely used by women at affordable PBS prices, 3 new menopause hormone treatments, 2 new endometriosis medicines. And already, Mr Speaker, 500,000 Australian women have filled 1.2 million cheaper scripts, saving tens and tens of millions of dollars at the pharmacy counter, but just as importantly, getting the dignity and the respect and the recognition that our system should always have been giving them, Mr Speaker. But there is more that we can do, and this week we will list a 4th new contraceptive, this one a ring, which will give women even more affordable choices around contraception. And on Saturday, Mr Speaker, new Medicare services will become available to allow women to access long-acting reversible contraceptives like implants and IUDs, Mr Speaker. We think 300,000 women every year, because of that measure alone, will save around $400 to access that different type of medicine, Mr Speaker. Affordable, accessible contraception is not a luxury, it's not a discretion, it is essential health care, Mr Speaker. And after the further cuts to medicine prices that we'll see on the 1st of January, Australian women, for the first time, will have access to the widest possible range of contraception for no more than $100 a year, Mr Speaker. More choice, better access, lower costs. That's what we're delivering as part of our strengthening Medicare agenda.
Call to the acting Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, I ask that further questions be placed on the notice paper.